Shannon Sharpe didn't just question the Browns' coaching staff. He lit them up like they'd bench a Hall of Famer mid-playoff run. His voice cut through discussion like a warning siren, aimed directly at whoever decided Shedeur Sanders belonged behind rookie quarterback Dillon Gabriel on the depth chart. According to Sharpe, this wasn't about performance. It was about politics, perception, and a deep misunderstanding of what actually makes a quarterback ready for the NFL.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
Gabriel, for all his potential, hasn't taken a single real NFL snap. Yet somehow, he leapfrogged over Shedeur, a quarterback who's been preparing for this moment under the harshest spotlight imaginable. It's not just the fact that he's Deion Sanders' son. It's that every throw, every huddle, every silence is judged like it's his last chance. Meanwhile, Gabriel walks in with no media baggage, no family name to carry, and suddenly he's the guy. The contrast couldn't be more obvious. Sharpe and Chad Johnson didn't mince words. This wasn't just a classic case of coaching conservatism. It was an organizational failure to understand the bigger picture. Shedeur isn't being outplayed. He's being outpoliticked. Because in today's NFL, the decision to start a quarterback isn't always about who's better. It's about who's safer. And Shedeur, with all his poise, legacy, and laser focus, somehow still represents risk to the suits upstairs. There's an unspoken rule in the NFL. If your name carries weight, everything you do will be weighed twice as hard. That's the pressure Shedeur walks into every day. He doesn't get the benefit of the doubt. He doesn't get grace for growth. He gets expectations that most rookies would crumble under, and yet he's still here, composed and waiting. The Browns' decision to stash him at QB3 doesn't just ignore his talent. It reveals how little they trust themselves to manage a player who brings more than just stats to the table. Sharpe called it out in real time. If Shedeur had been drafted with a different last name, if he'd given the media more flash, or leaned into the circus, maybe he'd be on the field right now. But instead, he chose focus. He chose silence. And ironically, that restraint has been used against him. It's not the first time a player was punished for being too controlled, but it might be one of the more frustrating ones. And when the pressure finally hits Gabriel, when the rookie speed bumps come, because they always do, Shedeur will still be there, not panicking, not bitter, just waiting for the moment he spent his entire career preparing for. This isn't just another depth chart drama. This is the slow burn of a player being written off before he's even allowed to write his own first chapter. And Sharpe made it clear. The Browns might have made their decision, but they haven't seen the last of Shedeur Sanders. Not even close. Shannon Sharpe didn't just question the Cleveland Browns' decision. He obliterated it. The benching of Shedeur Sanders in favor of rookie Dillon Gabriel wasn't just a mistake in Sharpe's eyes. It was an example of everything wrong with how NFL teams handle quarterback development in 2025. And when Chad Ochocinco Johnson jumped into the conversation, the frustration turned surgical. Because the issue here isn't just about a quarterback being buried on the depth chart. It's about the why. Why a player like Shedeur, who's done everything right, is still watching from the sidelines while someone with less experience, less scrutiny, and fewer expectations gets a starting job. Let's call it what it is. Optics over execution. Shedeur Sanders is QB3, not QB2, not in the competition. Third, in a league where raw talent and poise under pressure should be the most valued currency, somehow, the Browns have made a decision that flies in the face of both. Sharpe said it bluntly. Shedeur is ready. The Browns just aren't ready for him. And that's the root of the issue. It's not about what Shedeur can't do. It's about what the organization doesn't want to deal with. The media attention, the name recognition, the pressure that comes with playing someone who brings headlines just by breathing. But Sharpe wasn't having it. He laid out what most fans have been thinking for weeks. Shedeur has the mentality, the preparation, the composure. He's strategic with the media. He's smart in how he moves. He's patient, even when overlooked. And most importantly, he knows what he's walking into. He knows the second he steps on the field, the microscope intensifies. One bad throw, it's viral. One great drive, it's Deion Sunshines. The pressure is baked into the opportunity. And yet, That's exactly what he's built for. So why isn't he playing? That's what this discussion zeroed in on. Because Dillon Gabriel, while talented, is walking into a position Shedeur was more prepared for. Gabriel's path to the field is paved with grace. He gets time. He gets patience. If he struggles, it's development. If Shedeur struggles, it's a headline. And that's the double standard Sharpe and Johnson weren't willing to let slide. Johnson pointed out how personality and media presence can shape a quarterback's opportunities. It's not just about football anymore. It's about marketability. It's about control. Players like Jameis Winston can thrive under looser scrutiny because their persona matches the chaos. But when you're someone like Shedeur, measured, strategic, and born into fame, your margin for error vanishes. And let's not forget the added weight of his last name. Sharpe made it clear. Being a Sanders doesn't open doors in the NFL, it closes them. Not officially, not openly, but subtly. Coaches and front offices get nervous. They don't want to manage the circus, even if the circus isn't his fault. They don't want to answer for a player who didn't say anything wrong, but whose presence always feels like a press conference waiting to happen. That's why Shedeur isn't getting a shot. Because the Browns are scared of what he represents, not who he is. They're trying to play it safe. Stick with a rookie they can shape. Stay out of headlines. Keep the media pressure down. But in doing that, they've put a lid on the one guy who could actually lead this team out of mediocrity. Sharpe didn't just go off because he likes Shedeur. He went off because he's seen the cycle before. He's watched teams ignore potential for comfort. Watched coaches pass on leadership because they didn't want to manage personality. Watched quarterbacks where they get boxed out because they didn't fit the narrative. And now it's happening again. The Browns are using the word development as a shield. But there's no development happening when a player like Shedeur is stuck behind a quarterback who hasn't even seen real NFL defenses. You don't develop by being frozen out of opportunity. You develop by playing. And when Shedeur finally does get the call, because he will, it's not going to be because the Browns saw the light. It'll be because something forced their hand. An injury, a losing streak, a PR nightmare. They'll act like they've been patient. But the truth is, they've been avoiding pressure, avoiding accountability, avoiding the chance that Shedeur might come in and prove that he was always the better choice. And that's what will hurt the most when it finally happens. Because if Shedeur gets on the field and delivers, which Sharpe and Johnson both believe he will, it won't just be a redemption arc. It'll be an indictment on every coach who said he wasn't ready, on every executive who thought too much media, on every decision-maker who played scared instead of playing smart. And when it happens, Sharpe's going to be right there, pulling receipts, not to gloat, but to remind everyone what happens when you bury talent for the sake of comfort. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just any player. He's a test of whether the NFL is truly willing to evolve and recognize leadership and discipline when it comes in a form they don't control. The Browns are failing that test, and Sharpe knows it. That's why his reaction was so strong. This isn't about taking sides. This is about holding a team accountable for squandering the very thing it says it wants. A quarterback who's mentally tough, media savvy, patient, and ready. And the longer they wait, the worse it looks. Because if Gabriel plays well, sure, the Browns can coast a little longer. But the second he stumbles, the second the fans start chanting, the second the media begins asking, "What about Shedeur?" that silence becomes deafening. That's when the storm hits. And the Browns? They'll have to answer for every snap they didn't give Shedeur Sanders. So what's your take? Should Shedeur already be starting? Are the Browns playing scared? Or do they really believe this is development? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you're here for every moment of NFL chaos, every buried storyline, every meltdown they try to hide, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Because when Shedeur finally gets the shot he's earned, we'll be right here, watching, waiting, and yeah, running it all back. When that moment finally comes, when Shedeur Sanders does step onto that field, it's not going to be a quiet debut. It's going to be an eruption. The kind that makes front offices nervous. The kind that makes headlines write themselves. The kind that makes every coach who said he's not ready start backpedaling like a corner who just got burned. And Shannon Sharpe, he'll be sitting there like, told y'all. This isn't about rooting against Dillon Gabriel. No one's denying the kid has talent. But this isn't about raw ability. It's about context. It's about what Shedeur has had to carry that Gabriel never has. The pressure, the scrutiny, the weight of a name that walks into every room before he does. Every time Shedeur touches the ball, it's not just about football, it's about expectation management. And still, through all of that, he's handled it like a vet. Sharpe wasn't praising Shedeur because of his last name. He was praising him in spite of it, because being the son of Deion Sanders doesn't make your path easier. It makes it louder. Every step Shedeur takes is tracked. Every quote, every facial expression, every throw in practice, not just compared to his peers, but compared to his father. Let that sink in. This man is trying to start his own NFL career while constantly being compared to one of the greatest athletes to ever live. That's not pressure. That's legacy weight. And what's he done with it? Has he lashed out? Complained? Acted entitled? Nope. He's stayed focused. He's kept working. He's done the one thing every coach claims to want. Kept his head down and stayed ready. But readiness doesn't matter if no one gives you the ball. And that's where the Browns have messed this up. Sharpe said it plainly. The Browns aren't scared of what Shedeur can't do. They're scared of what he might do. Because if Shedeur gets in and immediately performs, if he comes in and wins, it exposes the decision-makers. It shines a light on the fact that they weren't building for the future. They were hiding from it. Because then the real question hits. Why wasn't he playing all along? That's not a question the Browns are ready to answer. So instead, they go the classic NFL route. Delay. Stall. Let's give the rookie a shot. Let's protect the locker room dynamics. Let's not rush it. But all that language is code. What they're really saying is, we're not ready to deal with the Shedeur Sanders effect. But here's the thing. That effect is coming whether they like it or not. And the longer they delay it, the bigger it gets. Eventually, something will force their hand. An injury, a blowout loss, a fan revolt. The kind of thing that makes coaches desperate and GMs rethink the plan. And when that happens, all the excuses vanish. It becomes real. And Shedeur steps in, finally, with a chance to show that the guy they treated like an afterthought was actually the moment. That's not just a redemption arc. That's a reckoning. And if you think Shedeur isn't aware of that, think again. He knows exactly what's going on. He's playing chess, letting everyone else move their pieces, stay loud, jockey for position, while he sits back, studies the board, and waits for the mistake. And when that opportunity opens up, he'll strike. Because Shedeur isn't just waiting for a start. He's waiting for the right one. The one where there are no excuses left. No more he's not ready. No more give Gabriel time. Just a ball, a headset, and a scoreboard. And if he delivers, which Sharpe and Johnson both believe he will, he won't just change the game. He'll change the narrative. Suddenly, the story isn't about Deion's son anymore. It's not about legacy. It's not about pressure. It's about a young quarterback who kept his mouth shut, did the work, and exposed an organization that doubted him. Not because he wasn't ready, but because they weren't. And what do the Browns do then? Do they scramble to protect their image? Do they act like this was a plan all along? Do they spin it as he finally reached the next level? Or do they do what they should have done from the start? Admit they mishandled it? Let's be honest. They won't, because NFL teams never do. They'll take the credit. Say they were being careful. Say it was all part of his development. But the receipts will be there. The months of questions. The headlines. The sideline shots. The when is Shedeur playing noise. It'll all be documented. And Sharpe, he's going to have the timeline, the quotes, and the exact moments they messed it up. Because this isn't just a quarterback controversy. It's a full-on case study in how the NFL continues to choose comfort over courage. The Browns didn't make a bold move by starting Gabriel. They made a safe one. And sometimes, playing it safe is just another way of saying, we weren't ready to lead. But Shedeur is. And when he finally steps into that huddle, he's not going to play like a rookie. He's going to play like someone who's been waiting for this. That's what's terrifying to teams like the Browns. Because when someone's that poised, that prepared, and that composed under pressure, they don't just show up, they take over. So what's the real story here? It's not just about depth charts. It's not just about who gets the start. It's about how many people are quietly hoping Shedeur doesn't ball out. Because if he does, a lot of people are going to look very, very wrong. And Shannon Sharpe, he'll be there to remind them. Because this was never about development. This was about doubt. And when that doubt finally gets put to rest, Shedeur is not going to need to say a word. The field will speak for him. Here's the uncomfortable truth no one inside the Browns facility wants to say out loud. If Shedeur Sanders goes in and plays well, even just well, it blows up the entire narrative they've built around Dillon Gabriel. The development plan? Exposed. The he's not ready yet excuse? Shredded. The whole front office's credibility? On the clock. And that's why they're stalling. That's why they've got Shedeur parked at QB3 like he's some redshirt project, instead of the NFL-ready quarterback he already is. Because giving Shedeur a shot isn't just a football decision. It's a franchise decision. It forces them to admit that everything they've said to justify his benching was nonsense. And Shannon Sharpe, he's not letting them run from it. He's not just calling it a bad decision. He's calling it cowardice. Because no one's asking the Browns to crown Shedeur the savior of the franchise. Sharpe isn't saying hand him the keys untested. What he is saying, what he can't believe isn't happening, is that Shedeur hasn't even been given a chance to compete for the job. Not QB2, not rotational snaps, not even a real preseason evaluation that wasn't clearly for show. Shedeur Sanders, third on the depth chart, not because he lacks ability, but because the people in charge lack guts. And Akasinko, sitting right next to him, wasn't disagreeing. He was nodding along, arms crossed, the body language of a man who's seen this movie before. Because he has. They both have. This exact same thing year after year. Young players with talent, composure, and all the tools buried under safer, quieter, less complicated options. Translation, less disruptive to the status quo. Because let's be honest, Shedeur is disruptive. But not because he's loud, not because he's dramatic, because he's good, because he's polished, because he's smarter than they expected, because he doesn't crumble under pressure, because he knows how to handle a room, a microphone, and a playbook, and because the second you put him on that field, the excuses stop. You can't say he's too green. You can't say he's a developmental project. You can't hide behind the word patience. The moment he starts completing passes, leading drives, running the offense like he's been there for years, it's over. Every headline writes itself. And every decision the Browns made leading up to that moment looks like a blunder. So they delay it, push it back, hope it never comes. That's what makes this bigger than just a depth chart. This is about control. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback. He's a disruptor to the system. And the system hates being disrupted. Sharpe called out the elephant in the room. The Browns aren't developing Shedeur. They're suppressing him, keeping him in the system until it's convenient. But that's not development. That's optics management. And the cost of that? You stall a player's career. You waste crucial reps. You risk losing the one guy in your locker room who might actually have the poise to win games under pressure. And the Browns? They can't afford to waste anyone. Not with their history. Let's talk about that history for a second. This is the same team that has burned through quarterbacks faster than they changed jersey sponsors. From high draft picks to desperate trade deals, they've been searching for a long-term solution at QB for over 2 decades. And now, when they finally have a player on the roster who checks every box and has the mental toughness to survive the media machine that comes with Cleveland, they put him third string. Sharpe was furious about that, and rightly so. Because if Shedeur were on another team, one that wasn't already buried under years of dysfunction, one that had a clear development plan, one that was actually thinking long-term, he'd be in QB meetings as a serious option, competing, learning, getting real snaps, not hidden like a liability the franchise hopes fans forget about. And here's the part that cuts deep. Shedeur has done nothing to deserve this treatment. He hasn't been a distraction. He hasn't made excuses. He hasn't even leaned on his name. He's done what everyone told him to do. Stay humble, stay focused, let your play do the talking, And now, the Browns are keeping him quiet not because he isn't good enough, but because they know he's too good to ignore, too good to stay benched, too good to stay quiet forever. And when that dam breaks, when Shedeur finally gets that chance, be it because Gabriel underperforms or the locker room starts buzzing or the fans start chanting, it's not just going to be about that game. It's going to be about every game he didn't get to play. And that's where the heat comes back on the Browns. Because every completion, every first down, every touchdown drive Shedeur engineers will become evidence. Evidence that they were wrong. Evidence that they waited too long. Evidence that they let politics and perception get in the way of progress. Sharpe's warning couldn't have been clearer. This isn't just a roster mistake. It's a reputation risk. And when you mishandle a quarterback, you don't just lose games. You lose trust. Players notice. Agents notice. The league notices. And once you get that reputation, it sticks. So if the Browns think they're buying themselves time with this QB3 decision, they're not. They're borrowing it. And eventually, the bill's coming due. Because Shedeur Sanders is the kind of player who doesn't stay buried. He rises. And when he does, he's not going to tell anyone, "I told you so." He won't need to. His play will say it for him. And the Browns will have to live with that. So tell me, are the Browns making a tactical mistake or a political one? Is this about development or fear? Drop your thoughts below. Let's put this conversation where it belongs, front and center. And if you're here for the real stories behind the PR spin, the mess behind the locker room doors, and the meltdowns waiting to happen, hit that subscribe button. Because this story, it's not just about a quarterback being benched. It's about a quarterback being ignored. And when he finally speaks, on the field, there won't be a press release in the world that can explain it away.